Welcome back, my little unicorns, to
Want to watch now,
where we talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about Brie Larson's directorial debut in Unicorn Store! Woo, 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 woo! I love this movie. I motherfucking love this movie. And if you enjoy this podcast, enjoy this episode in particular, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter, or at the very least subscribing to this podcast right now. Come on, bitch, hit that button. It helps out the podcast a lot. But let's talk about this movie. Okay, so can we talk about how ironic it is that this movie got a shitty rating? It got 5.2 out of 10. That is so funny to me. One, it's insulting because this is a genuinely great movie. It's funny, it's got amazing metaphors. I thought Brie Larson fucking killed it, both as the lead protagonist, and the direction and the general directing was perfect. I loved it. It was awesome. But overall, the whole point of the movie is about an artist who is basically getting judged and scrutinized, and no one's understanding her, like, message she has to bring to the world. While kind of, like, I think the idea is, like, the rest of us, we get it, but they don't. And isn't that ironic that it would happen to the same movie that the idea is getting, the points being made? That just made me laugh so hard by that rating alone. And it's also absolute bullshit. And if you know anything about the politics of movie reviewing, do not look at the reviews, if I'm being honest with you. Talk to me, a good friend. I would be happy to give you the truth, because so many people out in the movie reviewing industry are basically buttered up with a lot of perks, nice viewings, and sometimes they're even threatened and put in a position where if they don't give a good movie review, they won't be invited back and will basically have a job. And when you're a movie reviewer, to be the first to see a movie in theater gives you an advantage and gives you a longer term career. So do you know how many movies that have come out and have gotten fucking 10 stars, and you go and view it and you're like, I mean, I give it a 7 at best. It's like, yeah, do not listen to this bullshit. So I don't know who was pissed off at whom and wanted to give her 5 stars, but it's absolute bullshit. I loved it in every way possible. I really did. I was surprised because when they first set it up, it was a little, like, corny to me in the idea of just like, oh, I get it, she needs to believe in herself, blah, blah, blah. No. I swallow that idea whole, and I don't know, what's the consequence? Beat myself up? I don't know. I regret that I ever said that, because it's so much more than that, and a lot is going on, and we're going to get into that. In the first 3 minutes alone, this is how great it is. That's another compliment I want to say to the movie, that it's short. It's only an hour and 30 minutes. And yet, in an hour and 30 minutes, it constantly refers back to metaphors that kind of are either straight in your face but don't get annoying, or subtle. And it gets to the point. It lands to the point emotionally, and yet gets the message across. So that's kind of amazing. So speaking of which, of getting that idea across so quickly, we're going to talk about the first 3 minutes. We get these little home movies of a sweet baby girl. I wonder if they're real movies, by the way. It would be even sweeter if Brie Larson, they were real home movies, because sometimes the little girl just, I felt like I could see Brie Larson in there. I'm not sure if I'm crazy and they just did a good job casting the little girl. And the home movies felt real. They did not feel like a corny little child star being like, Mommy, Daddy, in like that weird Victorian way some child actors can be. And we get these little home movies of a kid being filled with glitter and unicorns and sweetness and rainbows, and something we can all identify, and every parent supports and fosters and tells their kid special. Then that beautifully transfers over to the grown-up version of our main character, Kit. And Kit is covered in paint, which, by the way, holy shit, if you do not know this, when I went to art school, like, one of the number one things they lecture us about is paint poisoning, especially with oil paints. But even acrylic paints, though they are not as toxic, they are so serious about proper ventilation wherever you work. And if it gets onto your skin too much, you leave it on for too long, or you have a lack of ventilation, you can actually fucking die in like a couple years. It's a real problem thing. So when I saw paint on her face, it was very cute, and I loved it for the scene of her like, painting out of the lines. But like, my inner art student was like, "You're gonna die! Wash your face!" So anyways, we get a cute little Brie Larson or Kit, sorry, as a grown-up, and she's painting on a canvas with a unicorn in the middle, and I loved the metaphor of everyone else standing next to a portrait of themselves, just really run-of-the-mill, and she's even painted off the canvas onto the wall. To be honest with you, I mean, and objectively, I was watching this movie with my boyfriend. He loved the painting as well as I. I thought it was a great painting, and in addition to that, I loved, just like we're gonna be like corny about it and really break down all the like what it means. I loved that she went beyond the canvas. It went perfectly with what she represents. But after we've kind of been swept up in the flow of the child home movies, and I'm a big believer of like you should totally be able to carry that hope and dream and those things you loved as a kid into your adulthood. That's completely fine. She is staring point blank at a bunch of judges, one of them being her teacher, I think. And they just look at her face. They don't give a shit and just frown at her. Look at her. Give a sneer of like, this is crap. And you just, I mean, to look at her face, see her face filled with disappointment and still be so confident to do that. Oh my God. Not only does that punch you in the heart, but I just feel like I could understand this so well. I think they got the point across beautifully. Because you know what's weird? I talk about this all the time. But why in the fucking hell is anytime something goes wrong or whatever, there's always a validation of, and they're a child, or, and she has a child, or, and this. It's never enough that the human is a human. It's like, we're not saying it, but once you hit a certain age, no one gives a fuck if you live or die. That's so fucked up. Because I would agree, like, on base value, we all give a shit if fellow humans die. But, like, it's always like, well, she's a child. I'm like, well, what if he's 40 and he's not that great at his job? Don't you care if he dies? Who gives a shit of what his value is to this planet? He's a human. It's a human life. It's enough. Or, well, she is a child. Cool. Any of us can procreate. For the most part, I'm not trying to hit any sensitive bugs if you're a woman struggling with fertility. I'm sorry you're going through that. But what I'm trying to say is, like, get over it. And also we have an overpopulation problem. That's just on a side note. So you see her heart being ripped out. But I want to actually tell a little mini art story before we go on and break down the rest of this amazing movie. So I went to art school. And for the most part, I had some cool, happy experiences and did learn some interesting things. But there was one class in particular that just made my blood boil. And the reason why it made my blood boil was my teacher was a fucking asshole. I would compare him to the idiot that gave her the bad reviews. I would get terrible advice, and it was never given a reason why I should do X, Y, and Z. And if I did it, I would be told the opposite. So, like, let's say that person was like, you need to have more red in your paintings. I would try doing the red. I would listen. I would try different things out. And then I'd be told, you have too much red in the paintings. It was this back and forth head game. I personally think they were just weird and had some personal problem with me. I don't know what their problem was. But the worst was I would be led astray by many teachers. I will never forget. This is just like I'm just trying to set this up, by the way. I'm not trying to have like a personal vendetta, but I'm just trying to give an example that one time I showed a painting I did in my free time, and literally one of my art teachers, this is not the same mean art teacher, this is an art teacher I liked, but they were also kind of leading me astray with bad advice. They just loved it so much, they brought all the other teachers and grad students out who were subsequently also a lot of our art teachers that were like, showed us all the paintings, and everyone fucking freaked out and loved it. And I'm sitting here being like, listen, the compliment's nice and everything, but are you fucking kidding me? I've been trying to do this shit in your class and you keep leading me astray. So should I just do whatever I want? Like, what do you want from me? That's what it can feel like when you're at art school, is what I'm trying to express. So here's the story. Essentially, this teacher favored this one other student. And this is important because in the art world, they say it's about art, but it's a lot of like who's fucking who. Perfect example, Velvet Buzzsaw, that recently came out, that horror movie, that was a great example of it. It's who you know, who you're friends with, so on and so forth. It rarely has to do consistently with what you're actually producing, though they make it seem like it is. And he just favored this girl who I really didn't have that much of a problem with her, but she was a little conceited. But for the most part, she was a nice person, so I'm not trying to sit here and shit on her. But, so we had to do a painting that was inspired by, but you kind of branched off of the idea of somebody else. You see what I'm saying? And there's an artist, I cannot think of his name off the top of my head, and he is an older artist, and he does these white paintings. And when I say white paintings, I'm not referring to monochromatic where, like, other things are happening, but they're all in the same color. I mean literally fucking white. They all look the same. There's no difference. You could argue maybe there's something being done in the brushstrokes, but not really. He tries to remove any type of figures, anything going on, so they're super abstract. They're just basically white paintings. Whatever. That's his journey. That's what he's doing. And to be fair, he's the only one doing it. So there's this sense of originality, and he owns it. She straight up fucking did, this student we were with, she straight up just did a white painting. She didn't do anything different from the white painting. She didn't try to do, she said she was inspired, and I just saw him like shaking his head like, yes, yes. And I'm just sitting there like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Are you shitting me? I see you criticizing myself and other students, and this, you're not giving me a good enough reason why this is speaking to you or why this is correct. When in reality, if we're just going to be objective here, she just full on copied what another artist did, straight up. She didn't branch off of the idea at all. So that's kind of what it's like being approved or disapproved in art. It's really luck of the draw, and if I'm going to be like really personal here, I find that the people that just happen to hit it lucky with both someone recognized them and they were able to then make a living off of it, and people just choosing out of fear to keep approving them because they're too much at the top that no one wants to speak otherwise, they tend to then hold that as the standard of, therefore they are quote unquote a terrible, slip of the tongue. They're therefore a more valid artist than someone else. It's kind of all bullshit. When you pull out of that though, the great thing though, and this is my last positive thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to actually talk about the movie. The nice thing though is there's tons of different art forms now. You can be an Instagram artist, Tumblr artist. Do not listen to the worth of the validation. It's all bullshit. I consider it all equal of talent and something worthy to say. And I love that we've branched off of just a small group of people judging each other, because when you really just show it to the main crowd, at that point, it's in the hands of the what's the word called? The whole, the mass, like everyone's, the mass opinion. And I love that because there's a lot of great people that would have never been able to make a living or had their hopes and dreams smashed by just one idiot. And that's what it's kind of like from her perspective. So now back to the movie. So Kit's obviously feeling very frustrated at that moment, and we get the introduction to her parents. First of all, I loved her parents, but I loved that they were motivational speakers. Not too corny, a little bit set in reality, but understandably they want the best for their daughter, and they even try to invite over a childhood friend. You can see the frustration of living at home. You know what's interesting? They brought up something that doesn't get discussed enough, in my opinion. Sometimes your parents do love you, and they are simultaneously disappointed, and it's not always just blanketly put out there. And it's difficult because you feel frustrated with these people that are simultaneously supporting you, but you can feel it. You can see that they're kind of having their doubts about you, which in a really fragile state, if you work in the entertainment industry in any way, shape, or form, I'm including you're an artist, you make artwork, or I don't know, you're a trapeze artist, or you're an actor, whatever. You kind of need to constantly be able to be unwavering in your confidence, because you're going to have a lot of pitfalls, fall downs, inconsistent income, so on and so forth. So when people you're surrounded by that you're living at home with, whether it be a roommate or in this case parents, you can feel their doubt in you or reluctance. It does not help. So Kit's understandably upset. I love, by the way, there's so many great one-liners when they're like, do you want to come with us to work today? We're going to be painting our dreams. People don't like when I do that. I love that. Just straight to the point. Because that's what Kit is doing. She's not trying to fit to any mold, any standard. She's just like direct line from her heart to her hand and then to her paint. She spends the day watching TV, just pointing this moment out because I love all the straightforward little snippets of subliminal messages through TV of just like her emotional state at the time. Love that they do that a lot where there's like unicorn binders behind her in the office supply store right after she's grappling with this idea of the unicorn. So she's going forward, and they invite an old friend of hers from school. He's working for them now. He's overly emotional and eating up everything they have to offer. And she feels like she's the only one seeing the truth. Again, another beautiful metaphor for what she's experiencing in her life and people putting her down. And I love that moment when he seems like he's saying a nice thing about her, and she kind of has a small moment of letting down her defenses, and then he shows her a picture of someone else she's more romantically in, and she's just like, damn it, I got caught up in the moment. I thought he was into me. Essentially, the dinner kind of goes astray, and she lets out her grievances in front of everyone, that she feels like her parents aren't into her, that she's sorry she's not this amazing child they've always wished for, and she declares she's going to start working for a temp agency. By the way, I love that they make it seem like it's so easy to go get a temp job. I wish it was. Sometimes the temp agency world has kind of got a little more brutal and a lot more unethical. Back in the day, temp agencies were just that. They hired someone to do photocopying or something like that, temporary gig. Now they use it as a way to underpay and underhire people they should rightfully be paying a full-time wage. And like, you have to have a lot of skills just to get like a $9 an hour wage job. It's intense. So she goes and gets this job right away, and she's working somewhere. And I love that she's, faking her way through this, trying to like, drink disgusting coffee, as she puts it, and blend in, have a good attitude about the whole thing. She's going to prove everybody wrong. And by pure coincidence, she runs into the VP, the vice president of the entire company, Gary. Interestingly enough about Gary, he is actually played by Hamish Linklater, I think is how you pronounce his name. Linklater is what I'm going to call it. He always plays, again, this movie is like filled with irony from its rating to what it's all about. He usually plays a pretty quirky, goofy guy himself. You could think of him as the male Kit counterpart. So I loved seeing him here as a more blander, weirder, borderline predatorial character. I thought that was fun to mess around. That's something I really enjoy in this movie, is seeing people perform characters they don't normally do. And he kind of hits it off with her. He's kind of inspired by her. She unintentionally unlocks a part of his mind he quickly buries up. And I love how they meet when she's just having a cute little moment of being quirky and photocopying her hand. I thought that was a great way to lull me into a false sense of security with this character. For a moment, I thought he was going to be inspired by her whimsy, so I loved that. Anyway, so after she has this first day and she has a dinner with her parents, you can tell she's still keeping an upbeat personality. With now she's gotten her life together. She's not gonna let the whole art thing hold her down anymore. You want me to conform? I'll conform. But it's kind of sad in that moment because she's kind of making fun of the whole thing by being like, I'm just doing what everyone else wants me to do. That's something I really like about Kit as a character. There's a certain sense of self-awareness and sarcasm she expresses, but a certain sense of naivete, the way she almost isn't fully aware of. It's like she's kind of aware and unaware of what she's saying, if that makes sense. I think it perfectly captures the idea of someone who would be like this. Like, who would have this much whimsy but be able to make that dark of a joke? So she's saying, like, yep, I'm just doing what everyone wants me, and unfortunately her parents are, like, congratulating her on that. Again, super funny that the same people who would be out there telling you to be yourself are congratulating her for conforming. Anyway, she's moving forward in her life and everything seems to be okay. She seems like she might have some opportunities in the future to go beyond being a temp and being hired full-time with this whole vacuum cleaner they need to sell and get better ideas for creatively. And she just gets this mysterious letter out of nowhere. It's like the most beautiful, like, Sometimes I love when movies just go, listen, just go with me. We're going to drop some weirdness in the middle of this. And they introduce it beautifully. She just gets a fucking letter and gets invited to the unicorn store. And this is when we see what will now be my favorite Samuel L. Jackson look. I gotta tell you, the man rocks an afro and tinsel in his hair like nobody else. I want more of it. It's a really beautiful look, to be honest with you. I hope many people cosplay as him because he had the most beautiful, interesting suits. And a small complaint I have is I feel that women have the luxury to wear whatever they want, whenever they want, lots of different styles and vibes. And men are usually kind of limited, and I wish they weren't so limited. I wish they had that freedom and creativity. I mean, I'm personally okay with it, and I'm not just talking about rocking a skirt, because, like, yeah, sure, gender fluidity, whatever. But what if you're a guy that wants to continue rocking a suit? Is there a way we can reinvent the suit? Apparently we can. This, what's his name? I think his name was the store, the seller, something like that. The guy who's selling the unicorn, he has got all the answers. And she goes to, the unicorn store. I love her first encounter with him, by the way, because he's like, come here, I'm going to give you exactly what you want. And that's what's so great about this movie. It starts with a weird idea. So she gets invited and he offers her what she's always wanted. The only thing she needs. And right now her brain is like in kind of slowly being molded and mushed into what everybody slowly becomes in as an adult, thinking they just need money and a job and this consistency. And there is truth to that, don't get me wrong. But when you put yourself too deep in a hole, you're really going to miss out on being able to fulfill those ideas, but in a way that makes you happier. So her brain's in that mindset. And he goes, a unicorn. She's like, a what? A unicorn? And little does she know this is everything she could ever want. I mean, it represents inspiration, creativity, magic. I mean, it even says it will love her forever. And even though I don't think that's the main problem that she's suffering from in the movie, that is one of the many things she suffers from, that fear of loss with her work, her job. You could simplify it as the idea that she needs ultimately love, but I would say it's more complex than that. And her first response isn't like, oh my god, of course, unicorn, I'm down with you. She has a very rational response because she's not a crazy person. She believes in all this shit, but she's not a crazy person. And her first response is like, wait a minute, this isn't real. This doesn't feel good. And she runs away and she just goes, this isn't real. I'm a business lady. And he goes, where are you going? And she goes, I'm going to buy graph paper. And he goes, graph paper can't love you. And she goes out, and when she leaves, she has a conversation with a man in a office about the idea of believing in something even though you know it's not there. They even compare it to Jesus, which I thought was like a great little kind of quick to the metaphor, get right to the action. And ultimately she realizes that if, like, the idea of respecting the idea of what's real and not real in the mind of the believer and connecting back to that core idea. I think that's what's more important to her even than love, is the idea of believing. And with that, she's sold. She shows up again. She's more intimate in conversation with the sales clerk, Samuel L. Jackson character. Again, I'm really happy. I'm glad they debuted this when they did and they held it off. It originally came out in Sundance in 2017, I heard. And I'm glad it didn't show up till now. I imagine it's getting more press because she came out in Captain Marvel, and that was received really well. Because she and Samuel L. Jackson were also in that, but in Unicorn Store, the thing is, Samuel L. Jackson is kind of like Humphrey Bogart and many other actors who kind of get pegged down into one role they're really good at. And don't get me wrong, it's always exciting and fun to see him in those characters. But, like, I don't think I've seen him like this ever, where he's just kind of a bit of a wackadoo character. And he was so good in it. It really shows his range. I want more goofy, lovable, happy, wackadoo sales clerk characters in his future, because he certainly gave a more refreshing vibe to it. And thus begins Kit's 3-step journey to receiving her unicorn. So there's certain things she has to fulfill before she gets it, which I love, because it beautifully, of course, and metaphorically, as I keep saying, aligns with things she needs to accomplish and overcome in her life. But it makes a lot of sense. I kind of love the realistic like if you're gonna just get something, I mean, it might be magical, but it still needs to live. You need to think about the reality of the fact that, like, how are you going to feed it, so on and so forth. It is still a tangible, sentient being that needs to be taken care of in this reality. So that makes sense. So the first one is she needs a stable. And now she is, like, laser fucking focused. She's kind of back to old Kit. She doesn't give a shit about anything else but this stable. So, in a way, she's more motivated at, like, trying to make her job happen because she needs the money for the stable and hiring and so on and so forth. She ends up meeting, oh my god, fucking loved this character, Virgil. He's played by, and if I say this name wrong as usual, I'm so sorry, Mamoudou Athie? Is that his name? I don't know. Lovely, lovely, lovely guy. I don't know what it was. First of all, he's got a sexy ass voice. He's a sexy ass dude. But he's not only just like, he is just objectively sexy, there's something different about him. I don't know, there's like he's got his own flavor, his own charm. And I think that's what makes him extra sexy. There's something alluring and inviting and relatable to him. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel that vibe too? That's how I felt. So anyways, loved Virgil. So she ends up hiring Virgil, kind of bullies him into helping her. And I love how their conversation goes. I mean, like, right away there's a nice connection because there's no pretense. I imagine, I don't know what Virgil is like in his private time, but, you know, I'm sure as he's dated around, people play games. They don't mean to, but there's a lot of unspoken rules. And here's this girl just straight up being like, I live in my house with my parents. I had to hide you because she'll think you're my boyfriend and she's annoying. Just kind of laying all the problems and anything else, no embarrassments out on the table. Because if she was born in 1990, which is the home movie, she'd be like 30 now, right? That'd be about the age. And they get talking and she just puts it out there that she needs a stable. And he's like, well, what? And she kind of puts him up to the challenge, which I absolutely love. There's also then the second conversation Kit has with the sales clerk, and he basically is like, listen, you need finances, okay? You're going to get a stable, you're working on that, awesome. Well, you need finances. How are you going to take care of this horse in the long run? How are you going to feed it? How are you going to continue to upkeep it? Because you need to, if you're going to love it forever, you're going to make sure it lives forever. And that's when she gets way more, she's someone who's not necessarily shy. I would definitely say that when she really wants something, she makes it happen. But she does have a lot of fears going on. And this is something that... Okay, so this movie, for me, battled a reoccurring conversation and metaphor that's been brought up in movies time and time again, and made it refreshing by talking about the realism of something. So she didn't just have the fear of, like, she's got to grow up and get a job. Her version of growing up and getting a job is corporate America. That's why she kind of subconsciously was drawn to that over any other... I mean, she could have gotten any other job. There's so many weird jobs out there. She could have done any of them. And I feel like she chose that because she thinks that's the line she has to fulfill. That's where all grown-ups go. That's what her parents want. That's where she's supposed to be. So it's not about just facing, like, being more can-do, being unafraid. It's about overcoming just the fear of corporate America, understanding that it's bullshit, just like her art show and art school experience. And that, she doesn't necessarily have to do it. She kind of needs to conquer it in this time period in her life to understand that she can go get another job. She can create opportunities for herself. This doesn't have to be it. But she kind of needs to throw herself in it and experience it to face that fear head on. Which a lot of movies just end it with being like, see, everything works out okay. Or, see, she just got a job, now everything's alright. When it's like, it's something weirder and twisted in a way that sometimes when people are going through it, they don't even know that's the bigger problem. So she decides to, step forward and talk to her VP and is basically like, please make me full-time. I will show you that I have something to offer. Again, she's starting to now, more than ever, believe that she does. and demand it of other people. She's not asking for them to see it in her, she's demanding them to see it in her. And he kind of loves this. This is zestiness. This is a new ground for her. But keep in mind, none of this would have happened if she didn't feel so motivated to obtain her unicorn. Also want to mention that her parents are constantly worried about, or they've mentioned once or twice that they're afraid that she doesn't have any friends, boyfriends, anything. She's quite a loner. And subtly, during this time period, she really inspires another woman who works there and a delivery boy. And kind of like, it doesn't end, the movie doesn't end with them, but I assume they're her new friends now. Or at least it branched off and showed that she was capable of making other friends quite easily, which I loved. They were very loving and accepting of her, and they were very cute. They were really sweet. So she is going to, she's getting her finances in order, she's facing her fears, and she's having some cute shenanigans with Virgil. I love her moment when she's like, "You built real walls, yeah!" And then they go and get hay together. All the while, I mean, he's assuming she's gonna maybe get a horse or something like that. It's not really fully getting answered. I don't blame him. He's just being hired. He's enjoying his time with her. And honestly, like, it's not crazy. Like, I live in an area where some people not only own horses, but have horses in their yard. So that's not a crazy thing that she would just have a stable built and have a barn built. Also, another beautiful moment, Virgil is learning he's more capable than he knows. She's kind of inspiring other people to reach out of their bubble unintentionally. But I've always had this belief that, like, everything's kind of like it leaks over into the next person. Maybe leak is a gross word to use. But if you're negative, that goes on and on and on. And if you're positive, that goes on and on too. So she's filled with this radiation and inspiration, and it's kind of lifting other people out of their own ruts. That includes that beautiful breakdown conversation with her two new friends she makes at the office when she's doing her presentation. And it includes Virgil just learning how to, skills with power saws and other things that makes him more of a valuable worker at his job, that gives him more opportunities. So going forward, she gets her third thing. And I love this conversation, this little bit of a bitterment fight with Samuel L. Jackson's character. He says, unicorns are very sensitive to vibes, good and bad, and they need a lot of positive, loving vibes. Which I laughed, and I'm like, am I a unicorn? Because I am so sensitive to vibes. And she ends up being like, if that unicorn doesn't like my vibes, it can go back to its little forest. And, of course, you know, this is supposed to be a cute, caring place, but they're not going to just pretend you didn't just freak out on them and seem like less of a good candidate for the unicorn. And he points out something important, that she's selfish. You know, I don't think it is at all selfish to, like, pursue I hate that word in a way. It's honestly used incorrectly a lot of the time when people are like, if they're just taking care of themselves or something, like, there's nothing wrong with figuring out what works for you. However, I think he makes a good point in saying, like, it's not just the selfishness of her living at home and not really paying any of her bills. Her parents might pay for all our supplies for all we know. But it's not about that. It's the idea that she's not considering how her emotions and how she kind of relieves them on her parents, what that might be like for them. I mean, like, she can pursue her own thing, but also consider that her parents are worried about her or express it in a different way. That includes even Virgil, who she later freaks out on, and it's so sad when that happens. And she is like, okay, well, I don't have the best vibes with my parents. I should work on that. That's, like, talk about the creme de la creme of her first just, like, being back in touch with herself, the idea of believing, then her moving forward and trying to be more independent, especially in a financial way, and say, I matter, I am worthy of opportunities and money, and her making friends. And then last but not least, her trying to build a connection with her parents, because ultimately she does love her parents, but I can understand her frustration with what they represent and what she's going through. So she makes an effort. She goes to a cute little kind of camping trip that would involve with their motivational speaking. And she feels very frustrated because everyone's going around the campfire and they're sharing, it's the truth circle. But she's been told beforehand from some girls that they think it's bullshit, that they just do it, or that if they don't share something, make something up, then they'll have to be forced to do like a hike to be with themselves. And not having all the information, I can't completely blame her. I hate when people are like, you should consider. Sometimes I feel like we're walking through life and we're just walking on eggshells around everyone. It's kind of fucking frustrating. I think as much as we need to be sensitive to each other's needs, we need to be sensitive that people might not have all the information, and to just let people fuck up, then give them the information and have them correct it. You know what I mean? So she thinks they're actually telling the truth circle. And she's like, okay, well, I'll be honest. Why not? And she shares her information about getting a unicorn. This is the first, she hasn't really told anyone. And her parents, understandably, are like, what the fuck? But I love, it's not a conversation of like, oh, are you going to go to the loony bin? You're crazy. Da, da, da. They think she might even be making fun of what they're doing. And they make the point of saying, it's really important what we're doing. Because, and this is when, okay, let me back it up. The two things happened. One, I was a little annoyed at the mom. Love the mom character. But I notice a lot of parents do this. They take when a kid says, I'm unhappy, as a personal attack of like saying, oh, so I'm not a perfect mom. Meh. And I'm just like, oh my God, nothing could piss me off more. Because you know why? To a certain degree, I understand how that can be insensitive. But isn't it way more insensitive to you that your kid can't feel any unhappiness based on the level of your parenting when it has nothing to do with that? She never even is like, my parents suck. She's just like, I feel like you guys don't like me. And I know that is technically a conversation of like parenting. I think it's just more on a person-to-person level. Like, you, pretend I didn't come from you, born related, feel like you're judging me. I feel like when it's thrown up in the air of like, you don't love and respect me, or you don't think I'm a good parent, you're kind of deflecting the main discussion and the thing to get over. Ironic, right? Someone who's all about talking about their emotions, but that's a sideline, a normal, reasonable response in that position. And it leads to her having an alone moment with her dad saying, you basically think that we don't know what we're doing, but like, we do know these kids are lying. And she's like, you do? And that's something she needed her eyes open to. She thought she had all the truth. She was the believer. She saw stuff no one else did. But in reality, sometimes part of growing up is knowing the truth and how you handle it. And they basically are like, we know these kids are lying, but sometimes their terrible circumstances are so much worse. We allow them to lie because we understand they're like dealing with this terrible situation. And it's a good point. It shows her to be like, girl, there's people with worse problems. But that also is not an answer. That's another thing I don't like when people compare themselves to other people, because all I can think is, one, gross, then you basically unloaded all your problems onto someone else. But two, like, your feelings are still valid, even if, shit's going on in someone else's life. But I think his main point is just waking up to being like, be sensitive of other people's shit, understand the greater truth. You get what I'm saying. Even though her, like, situation with her parents is, like, definitely not great in that moment, I feel like that was, like, a what's it called? When you have an important breakthrough moment for them, it might be rough in that second, but I think they understood each other a little bit better. So she ends up digging deep and truly being herself, wearing this badass outfit. I love when her new friend is like, oh, what's with the costume? And she's like, oh, these are just my clothes. It made me think about how I feel emotional turmoil whenever I see the kids section in Target. Because back in the day, and I'm referring back in the motherfucking day, there used to be the best selection of clothes at Target. They used to have a revolving window of designers. And of course, these designers wanted to be memorable. So in the competing state of wanting to be memorable, these clothes were always so iconic looking and cute, lots of patterns and glitters. And the beauty was that they would work if you were older. Like, I could see a 30-year-old wearing it, and I could see a 14-year-old wearing it. And they had women's sizes. It wasn't like all junior or whatever. So I loved that. And then somewhere along the line, something died. I don't know what happened, but you go to the kids section and it is popping. Like, if it was my size, I would wear a lot of their shit. But it unfortunately isn't. You go to the fucking boring ass peasant tops and maroon and white and black clothing of the women's section, and it just, you die a little inside is all I'm gonna say. So Kit's wearing her amazing outfit. She does this badass representation for the vacuum. I thought it was so beautiful. I thought it was hilarious that anyone would be so negative and stingy about it. But when she does it, she makes a great point of saying that the vacuum can be magical. She points out that it can come in different colors, so that's a good business decision. But the whole advertisement and idea behind the PR of the product is that it can vacuum away your problems. Again, beautiful metaphor for what she's going through. But I loved when both of those people were bringing up that they have problems and they too wish they could get rid of it. You could work with this idea somehow. And I love the joke that even the gross VP, and he becomes gross to be in that moment, is more into the woman who's in lingerie holding the baby. Again, I love just the joke of like, she probably sees the world as that, is that people only want that. And in many regards, that's what they sell and put out there image-wise, that classic shitty stereotypes and ideas, thinking that's all people want. Isn't that so funny that people think that like women want that? Most women don't give a shit about having babies, me included. But I'm not trying to get into like gender stereotypes here. I'm just talking about that when she gets rejected for clearly a cool presentation and idea, she's more certain than ever that she doesn't need the place. She's finally figured out, just like she couldn't, unlike how she couldn't figure out before at the art show, she realizes all of this shit is bullshit and I'm better than this. I can make my own opportunity. I can make my own magic. I have something valuable to offer. And she quits and she leaves. So she's gonna come full circle with herself, but like shit hasn't quite hit the fan yet. And beautifully doesn't hit the fan too long, and then we have a 10-minute montage of, her in her glitter outfit walking around sad in the rain. Thank God. See, Brie Larson understands what people actually want to watch in a movie. She has a nice little moment with Virgil. And for a second, I think he thought she was maybe going to confess feelings to him because they were developing something there. And says, hey, I have more valuable things in my life. That's why I kind of like quit/got fired. And they're bonding, and he eventually is able to finally, in a very, what started out as a friendly conversation of being like, what is this fucking thing in your life? What is this stable what's happening? And she admits the unicorn. She even takes him all the way to the store, and the store's not even there. And I really loved the conversation between them. Instead of him saying, Virgil telling Kit she's crazy or anything like that, that shows what a great guy he is. It isn't about her being crazy and him not believing her. He's more focused on the idea that she isn't crazy, that she really did believe this, that someone's trying to trick her. I love the reality of it, that someone could be trying to steal her finances and prey upon her sweetness. I loved that he cared about her. I loved that he brought up a point when he was focused on that, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that. That's a really reasonable way of seeing this whole situation. And she ends up having basically a temper tantrum on him and basically kicking him out, so to speak, of her life. And I love when he stands up for himself, like, give me some fucking credit, yo. Like, I deserve to be here with you through this thing. Like, I can't believe you're just getting rid of me and lumping me in with everyone else. Another problem she used to have. She thought people were lumping her into a box, but ironically, she was doing the same to other people. Isn't that funny? How we think we're so right and everyone's wrong, and sometimes it's the reverse all at the same time. So she ends up having one last breakthrough. She just admits to her mom that she had a temper tantrum. She was connecting with her mom, she was being open, and admitting she had a temper tantrum and that she was wrong, that's huge. That's really, really, really big deal. And her mom gives her some of the best advice. And I know it seems dumb and corny, but I thought it was great advice. The idea that she said, the most grown-up thing you can do is fail at things you care about. Now, when you first hear that line, you think Lifetime movie, right? Just like, what does that even mean to me? How am I supposed to grow from that line? But think about what she's saying. So she's supposed to represent this adolescence, this innocence, this being shielded and told constantly you're doing well. And think about it. We deal with that shit a lot in our younger generations. Like, I feel like the last 3 generations have constantly been told, like, you're great, you're special, you're special. And then when you get older and you're not fucking special and you're maybe not that great at the thing you do, the pitfall and the sadness that comes is so intense because you haven't been taught to, what's the word? Like, evolve, like, go with, like, keep moving with everybody, keep, just, like, adapting is the word to the situation at hand. And it takes a while to be like, girl, it's not even a big deal to not be special. Or maybe you'll find you're special when you're older. Someone said something beautifully, because a lot of people grapple with where they are financially or their career or whatever, and someone said something beautifully. They said, Jordan Peele didn't get Key and Peele until he was 32. So that means he was probably a starving comedian, broke as fuck for a long time, until the point where it was probably inappropriate how poor he was at his, like, at a certain age that people, like, somehow defined it at. And then he didn't get out until he was 40. So, like, girl, it's just beginning. If you feel any insecurity, don't worry about the age thing. Fuck it. We're all gonna live forever, okay? It's all gonna be all right. And that's what the mom is trying to say. She's like, so you left that comfort zone, that place you were in where you were getting constant approval or expected it, and you tried anyways. Of course, to fail, to know that it's not going to work out, but still keep going, like, fuck, you are out of that, you're out of the little Rugrats playpen around you anymore of emotions. Trying and hurting yourself and keep moving forward, you've taken away all the safety blankets. You're here. This is what being grown up is. So keep doing it. Keep trying. Fuck it. That's huge. I mean, one of the greatest things you say you can do is fail. I think that's like the metaphor of the line or whatever, or the saying that it goes. And honestly, they couldn't be more right. Like, that really is how it is. Like, it sucks hearing that, and I'll tell you, it's never less scary, especially if you're, like, new in this world, because you're like, I'm gonna fail one day, and, like, I just gotta take it. No. But the reality is, like, and I've had a lot of failures, but, like, you just come out of it and you're like, fuck, I really did learn something, or fuck, I am at the least stronger than I was before, and it makes life a lot more bearable, because life is fucking intense. So you kind of need to build some armor, and unfortunately, when you get your armor, it is not easy. You are the smelting and the fire and the pain and the banging of the hammer, and it's intense to go through. Now, this is what's so sweet. So, because her parents love her and care so much about her, they really do give a shit. They end up calling Virgil, unbeknownst to her, and she ends up going outside to the stable, and he's finished the stable. And he's decorated it in true Kit fashion. It's got all of her artwork around her here, and that's something I really loved about this movie, and the direction and the writing about it. This would be a corny moment. It would be the swelling of the music. It'd be so fucking self-aware, you'd roll your eyes and kind of lose the gesture of it all. But because it's, like, really cute and straightforward, and he just simply says a nice line of being like, if you were a building, this would be you. I don't know, the frankness of it all, the casualness of it all. I was really swept away by the moment. I love when Kid is like, that's the nicest thing any man's ever said about me. And you think everything's been resolved. You know, maybe she was tricked about the unicorn. It was all a lie. Which, by the way, maybe I'm just a true believer, but, like, I didn't for a fucking second doubt that Samuel L. Jackson was real. And you're left thinking maybe it was all in her head, but at least she learned her lesson and she built a connection. She motherfucking gets a call. I love that it was almost pulled away from her. You think in that moment, though, that maybe Virgil is going to ditch her because he's like, give me the phone. Like, he's being heroic, and he's like, you cannot be serious that you're going to go for it. And it's interesting, by the way, I just want to point this out, The store clerk says Virgil doesn't get to see the store because it's not for him and he don't believe. But in the end, he sees it. So does that mean somewhere along the way he believed it against all the odds? Just a question. So she ends up going, I gotta go. I gotta go see this unicorn. Hell yeah, I want my unicorn. And she hears that maybe if she doesn't accept it, there's someone else who is on a waiting list and gets it next. She races over there, and she gets to meet the motherfucking unicorn. The rainbow on the eye, the reluctance to walking in the room, the excitement, everything. But even though she gets her unicorn, and she just needed to know it was real. That's what she needed for anything. She didn't even need the unicorn. She needed, it's that beautiful, like, it was inside her all along moment. But she just needed to know it was real. Honestly, sometimes, like, I think that's all anyone needs. I mean, that's why sometimes people experience a quote-unquote miracle, and maybe it helps them with their faith, so I'm just, like, using that as an example. But, like, it's just knowing, just a little sample size of, like, is everything I'm doing worth it? Whether it be a kind, like, good job, but the biggest one is, like, when you get, like, validation through, like, awards or financial means or something. It's stupid. You're not egotistical or narcissist. You just fucking need to know some sign, some tangible sign you're in the right direction. And that's all she needed. And bravely, may I add, she gives up the unicorn. I'd be like, listen, I believe in everything, but I'm taking this motherfucking unicorn home. That bitch is gonna wait on her waiting list. But she chooses not to take the unicorn. And she gets this beautiful goodbye, and it's basically like, this girl needs it. She needs it more than me. I've learned my lesson. I've grown over this period of time. Just know I love you. You mean something to me. And, you know, I bid you adieu. And beautifully, Virgil walks in with the store clerk, so I'm glad that on that ending note, he got to... his reaction, by the way, is amazing. I love his, like, holy shit, it's fucking real, damn. And when they leave, they get to see the girl. She looks a lot more worse for wear. She definitely needs it. She needs that love. And she's technically in corporate America, so she definitely has a job. She's got a lot more stable. She's way more in the deepness of it all. I feel like Kit's character truly was a unicorn in itself, so that's why she just needed validation that it was real. She just needed to see her people. And Kit ends up having this cute little moment with Virgil. They hold hands. That's why I'm so happy he got to see that the unicorn was actually real. Because by him seeing it was real, he was then, like, there's just kind of an unspoken, like, let's move forward and clearly be some sort of a couple. But, like, I wasn't fucking crazy. And I'm so glad you believed me and you had my back. So the bonds have been forged. I'm very happy about that. And I love that it didn't even end with a kiss. It just ended with them holding hands and a new sense of hope being renewed. And you kind of don't feel with, like, oh, everything's gonna be all right. She's just gonna now make a living as an artist. I just think you know she's gonna be alright no matter what. And honestly, that's the most we can hope for as adults. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to sound bleak. I'm not negative. I'm a true believer and optimist. But, like, sometimes that's all we fucking need. Don't underestimate that shit. So, we get a cute little keep going Kit subliminal on the bus that passes them. So it's almost as if while she has moved forward, it's like the story clerk is always with her in life. Because, again, maybe she truly is her own unicorn, and he's still connected to her because she is. And it's just really beautiful. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like it talked about the greater issues of seeing what we're supposed to be, creating that as a fear, and understanding that it's not just the fear of, like, wanting to be something we're not, but thinking we have to be that avenue. That often is how it goes when you are doing a creative field. You think you need to fit this corporate America idea. Like, that's the opposing idea when it's like, well, maybe, like, a good example. Okay, so when I was younger, I thought I was going to be an artist. I thought that's the path I wanted to do. But happily enough, I figured along the way that's not what I wanted to do. And I had not anticipated it, but I, like, really love podcasting. Like, who fucking knew that's what I was meant to be doing? And do you see what I'm saying? Like, you think you have to go one path, but that doesn't mean that's the way. And honestly, let's be real, if we could all have that sort of motivation, I think that's the biggest thing. Find your unicorn that can motivate you through your fears and stuff, get you to that next path, and then you're good to go. Also, a bedazzling uniform. I thought Brie Larson, who directed it, killed it. The writer was Samantha McIntyre. God damn, sorry, Samantha. Sorry, girl. I thought both of them killed it. I really want more shit. I want them to both work together on more projects because I loved it so much. And you definitely need to go watch this movie. It's one in a million. It really is that fun and good. And you'll feel definitely very heartfelt after it. Please, though, if you feel as heartfelt as I do, consider becoming a Patreon today. And don't forget to subscribe, give a heart, tell a friend, tweet me, all that good jazz, because it helps out the podcast so much. I love you in the most I love you in the most platonic way possible. Have a beautiful day. Bye!